Everybody, meet the Overflood Entity MT. It's an interesting car. It looks kind of futuristic and cool, but it doesn't stray too far in the aftermarket department. It does have an HSW version, and this is the HSW version you're looking at, so that doesn't really change too much in the visual department. I must confess before I even start, I am a huge fan of the Overflood. I've been for a while, so I was really excited to see a new vehicle, and that potentially it would do what the XF did in the early days. It would be that quietly quick car that was faster than everything else, but just didn't stand out a lot. What it definitely will stand out with is the price. The base version of this car will run you $2,355,000. There's no trade price for it, and if you want to get the HSW upgrades, it's another $850,000. So it's going to have a big hill to overcome to be worth that kind of pricing. So let's get into the testing right now to show you exactly how well the Entity MT holds up against its competition. Welcome back to Grapeseed Circuit. Here is where we test the acceleration, the braking, and the handling of the Entity MT. And there's going to be a video I go in a little bit later, but now you can see that there's HSW numbers and non-HSW numbers. I realize that I have to do a lot more testing with some of these cars to get you guys the information, but we'll just start with that. I'll probably make another video on it to go over it. But to go over the Entity MT itself, the Entity was a very stiff car when it came to its HSW version. It just didn't want to go into the turns right. It was very slippy. It felt way too overpowered, but it just didn't feel like the handling was where it needed to be. It's a very difficult car to control, and even with that being said, it definitely, no matter how much you push the car, is in either trim is not going to be the fastest. It did a 122.116 at Grapeseed, with the non-HSW doing 125.736. To put it in its competition, the fastest in the class is the weaponized Ignis at a 118.095. So it's way off the pace. At first, I really wanted to kind of master it a little bit more and, take some of those weaknesses and try to see if I could turn them into positives. But it doesn't have the power to compete against the upper echelon of cars. And the other problem with it is that definitely with price-wise and with everything going on with it, it's just not worth getting into it to try to perfect the imperfections of the car. There's just too much out there to rein it in. It still looks good. It still kind of feels good. The non-HSW one actually feels accurate. So if those who had the HSW, you might actually enjoy driving that a little bit better than the HSW version, but still it's not going to be a car that's going to be highly competitive in the overall scheme of things, and that's pretty crazy from a car that's very expensive. This is Route 68, and Route 68 has but one purpose, and that is top speed. How fast can it overcome Route 68? Well, it didn't do very well in the overall. It was 4.519 seconds behind the Vest 8's 133.395. The HSW did the 137.914, while the non-HSW did a 150.211. What is really crazy about this car is that in the HSW version, it just felt like I was hitting a wall. Like it didn't quite have enough oomph to push the car. It's very evident in the non-HSW version as it tries to hit this wall of speed, and it almost like it lags down, like it tries to oof through it, and then all of a sudden it has no power. The engine just backs off, and then it tries again. I don't know what that's all about, but it definitely hurt the car in the long run. Even with that fixed, I don't think the car would be the fastest out there, and when it comes to both trims with HSW and non, it just really didn't feel competitive at all, which was unfortunately very sad. Welcome to Going Down, and this is where we test the off-road capabilities of the Entity MT, and in short, it really doesn't have any. Now, that's not unusual for a supercar. In fact, the fastest car that we have on the dirt right now for a super is the Cyclone. I'd like to do a little bit more testing with that to kind of figure out what is the true best car when it comes to off-road. But for now, we're just going to keep the stats the way they are and continue to test to kind of understand what it is. But at the moment, like I said, the Cyclone is the fastest. What we learned from the Entity MT is that if you notice, the non-HSW version is quicker on the dirt. And that kind of shows you how the HSW upgrades are, and sometimes problematic. I think a little bit more design and thinking has to go into this before they move forward, introducing more of these HSW cars. Sometimes this HSW thing isn't a solution, it becomes more of a problem. And with this car, I think it's a perfect opportunity to bring that up. It's something we're going to go over at the end of the testing right now, but I did want to go over it at this point to kind of say this is where you start learning the problems with HSW and kind of how they needed to be fixed. But to direct them specifically at the Entity MT, it was the definition of why it failed. It just couldn't get the power together. All the problems that it has, especially on dirt, come to a head, and it really slowed it down in a way that the Entity MT just couldn't recover from. Now, back into In the Grove. Now, this is an HSW car, so the HSW variant has a tier. It is in Tier 3. It is the top dog racing, and that puts it up against something that is really going to be unbeatable, and that's the Hakuchou Drag. The Hakuchou Drag got a 114.055, and the Entity MT could only muster a 124.987. There is so many problems here, not just the idea that the car isn't as fast, not only that it's a broken class, but the problems with the MT when it came to the regular street really came to a head. Any bumps, movement, any sort of thing that jostled it or got it out of touch would basically throw the car around. It couldn't get any of its grip down the way it needed to, and it couldn't apply its power. I had to retest this probably more than I've retested any vehicle, and that's saying a lot coming from testing on cars like the S95, because it was a train wreck. It was so tough to get it to stay locked on the road and get it to finish. So at the end of the day, yeah, the HSW version is not going to be the fastest car. The Hakuchou Drag still has that title, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. So the verdict on the Entity MT is a sad one. It's a story of a vehicle that was just not good enough. I mean, it sounds good, it looks good, but they didn't do enough with the aftermarket to really help its appearance get to that next level. It fails at that aftermarket area, and it fails at HSW. And I think what happened with this car when it came to design, it was a victim of the HSW mindset. When you designed the first HSWs, they were really good, even though they were overpowered and I think in some ways not necessary. With this car, it felt like they designed one part of it, maybe the HSW first, and then came back and designed the regular car. And it always means that if you start in one position or the other, something's got to fail, something's got to give. And I think the stock version of the car was really solid. It would have been a great version of the vehicle, and then when you put HSW in it, it broke the car. So I don't know. I'm really wondering if the rethinking of HSW needs to be a thing. I don't know how many of you guys out there don't have HSW as access to your car. I'm guessing any of the old platforms don't have it, or if the PC has it or not. Put it in the comments below and let me know. We're going to continue to put the HSW and non-HSW testing in it together. But unfortunately, because of these downfalls and because of the problems that went into it, it caused the Entity MT to just fail. And it's unfortunate because it should have been a great car. And I'm not asking it to be the fastest car out there, but just like the Entity XF, the Entity XF wasn't the quickest, or if you will, the fastest car out there, but it was always competitive, and it was competitive for a really long time. It was the better option because it looked cooler, it had so much better handling, it had all those things that pretty much the Entity MT has none of. So unfortunately, I'll be going back to sell my Entity MT, and it'll be the first Overflood that I've ever sold, and that's a big disappointment for me. And I don't know, Rockstar, maybe next time you can fix some of these problems and help us rectify the brand. But for now, this is what we got. Thank you guys for tuning in. This has been car testing in GTA. We're going to continue to bring you more stuff. I was really excited. I do think that with this current update, Rockstar got it right. So I'm looking forward to what they have in the future, and I hope you guys are too. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll be back for more GTA car testing coming soon. Talk to you then.